So this section not only deals with the explanation of what are hazards, it also links it to what it does to your health and some terms that you have to be aware of in terms of risk and probability and how to assess it and how to deal with it. So, probability of suffering from a hazard. This is the definition of risk. That can cause injury or disease, I don't know why all these things are covered, death, economic loss, or damage. Excuse me. So probability of suffering from a hazard that can cause injury or can lead to a problem, okay? That's what risk is. So how do we analyze it or identify it and categorize it into hazards? They call this risk assessment. And unfortunately, all these words look the same, and they will appear on the AP exam. Okay, they're pretty specific. There's always a section on diseases and hazards and risks. So please try to, get these down. So statistics are used to measure how much a hazard can cause damage. The word hazard is there as a little icon. So if they use statistics to measure how much a hazard can cause damage, that's kind of assessing the risk. And the probability of risk and the consequence of the risk is something else they look at. When you talk about risk management, you're talking about how can we reduce the risk or the hazard. So there's basic hazard categories. Try to see if you can come up with some. I know you know one.
Bio.
Nuclear.
Okay, biohazard. So that's here. I just don't know where.
Fire hazard.
Fire would be what kind of hazard? Think about it. When we think about fire, how do you... Thermal, we reference it as what? I'll just give it to you. Physical, good. And heat, correct. So we're here. Physical, fires, volcanoes, natural disasters. Biological hazards, as you mentioned. What else? Environmental hazards, which are kind of like under cultural, I guess you could say. Oh, you're looking at pollution, land, and water? That's actually chemical hazards. Remember when you reference the word pollution? It's chemicals being introduced. Paula, I'm going to ask you to come over here today. Psychological lifestyle choices is also a hazard. So smoking, your choice to do all these things, I guess is what they're saying. Yeah. Chemical hazards. They're categorized into specific groups. We could start with toxic. Anytime a chemical can cause permanent damage to an organism when inhaled or ingested, that's considered toxic. And there are 3 types. Anybody know what the first one is?
Carcinogens.
Good. Carcinogens. Chemicals that include radiation or certain viruses that cause or can lead to cancer. And some examples that we've actually referenced in the classes: formaldehyde, tobacco or cigarettes, UV, and arsenic. All right, next group, mutagens. I don't know why I didn't cover those, but what are they? Oh, because I think it's harder to get the answer. Everybody knows carcinogens, but then when we go the other way, if I show you the word and I show you pictures, do you know what they are? Chemical form. What? Good. They're going to cause changes or mutations in your DNA, and they're usually linked to some form of radiation. Okay?
What does that say?
Which leads to cancer. From mutagen leads to carcinogen. It's kind of linked, right? Teratogens. What are they going to do? They can cause what? And what? Mainly. Yeah. So it's going to be always, you see that word? You're going to link it to embryos and fetuses, or before birth. And alcohol, pregnant women. Oh, no. Evaluate hazards, okay? We're going to look at toxicology. So we're going to take studies on how toxic a chemical is and how does it affect humans. We're going to, and you see the similarities in these terms. Toxicity measures how harmful a chemical is to the health. So you know that ology or logy means study of. So try to remember that when you see those two words. Then you've got case reports. These are going to be reports that physicians make, and this helps evaluate how hazard a chemical is. And these are experimental groups. Have you ever been asked, oh, we'll pay you $100 a day if you try this drug out for us? Key factors to determine, or ask yourself the question, how much exposure is considered harmful? So obviously, a dose. You've ever heard of that word? How much is ingested, inhaled, absorbed? Because sometimes you don't have to breathe it in, it can just go through. And I'm going to go over the difference. How soluble it is. Okay, that's a key component to being considered harmful. If it can accumulate and magnify inside the organism. Remember that? Like DDT. An organism was exposed, like grass, let's say, and then the organism that ate the grass got a higher concentration. So the dose increased. Genetics. You know, some people are programmed differently, and that has to take into. And what do these words mean? Persistence and resistance. Remember that was a test question.
Yeah.
Persistence is?
Oh, I thought that was sweet.
Yes. Say it.
When it like stays in
How long it can linger and not react with anything in the atmosphere, that's its ability to persist. And then resistance is if they or you develop resistance, because it could be both. All right, so we're going to go a little bit further and categorize industrial. When you think of hazardous waste, think of waste from the industry, because in your home, there is hazards, okay? Because we don't deal with our garbage appropriately, like Clorox. It's a hazard. And nobody rinses the Clorox before they put it in the recycle bin. Well, I'm sure some people do, but the majority don't.
I do.
But in general, hazardous waste are linked to the industry.
Where's Stephanie?
So there's three main groups, okay? Chemical, and we already talked about this a little bit. Chemical hazards can be flammable liquids, reactive substances, corrosive substances, and toxic. So flammable, you'll see things like may ignite. Corrosive, we'll say what? Acid can what? Which
burning a visor stuff.
it can. So can something toxic.
It breaks down.
It can break through or eat through substances. Reactive may combust, okay? And toxic is basically harmful when inhaled or ingested. All right, so medical hazards. I'll tell you today. Good. Anything from the medical office, hospital, whatever, is considered medical hazards. And I think in the end I'm going to talk about storage for each of these, because they're all unique. And radioactive waste is also a hazardous waste from the industry, and it's its own category. So you've got chemical, radioactive, and medical. For years, this slide was added probably 6 or 7 years ago when this became a big topic of waste, electronic waste. That's EWaste, and it's huge, yeah, because you have all of these items that came into play: monitors, DVDs. Think about a refrigerator. I mean, that's a huge. TVs, phones, huge. Yeah, that's its own. That should be its own category too. You know, all of these lights have to be discarded in a specific way. They're not supposed to be dumped.
What happens if they break?
It depends what.
There's
some
a
lights that you
specific packaging, and you're supposed to pay for them to pick up that package. Okay, so to discard your waste properly, and a lot of businesses follow these regulations because they need that certificate of proof, like even documents. And I shouldn't. Where do you think our e-waste ends up?
Africa.
Close.
The ocean.
India?
Made in
China.
China?
Taiwan.
US produces half of the e-waste in the world, and 70% of our e-waste ends up in China. Why? Because they're going to recycle our products and make new ones.